Welcome, I'm Nina Gryphon, and this is the Astrology and Magic channel. Today we will talk about the astrology and the esoteric significance of the eclipse of April 8th, 2024. First off, I wanted to say thank you to all of my patrons. If you would like to become a patron and get early access to all of my weekly forecasts, astrological and magical content, you can go to patreon.com/Nina Gryphon. At the highest tier, you also get access to my monthly Magical Elections ebook, which is a document that I put out every month that teaches you how and when to make astrological talismans. Let's talk about the solar eclipse of April 8th, 2024. This eclipse occurs at 19 degrees and 24 minutes of Aries, just beyond the degree of the sun's exaltation, which spans from 18 Aries to 18 degrees and 59 minutes of Aries. So this eclipse tells the story of a decline from a great height. In this eclipse, the sun has already reached and passed his degree of exaltation. So if the degree of exaltation is like sitting at the tippy top of a mountain, this eclipse is just past that. It's past that point of complete height, suggesting the start of a decline or a descent. One is still on the mountain, still elevated, because the sun is in Aries, the sign of his exaltation, but it's now on the way down. So let's keep that in mind as we talk about the details of what this eclipse could mean. The sun in particular symbolizes a ruler, especially when it is in his exaltation, as it is here. There's an alchemical text by Robert Flood called Utriusque Cosmi, where he writes, quote, "The sublimity and perfection of the macrocosmic sun is clearly revealed when royal Phoebus sits at the very center of the sky in his triumphal chariot, his golden hair fluttering. He is the only visible ruler, holding in his hands the royal scepter and governing the whole world." End quote. Now, this eclipse is in the 9th house when it's set for Washington, D.C., like the March 25th eclipse, which also took place in the 9th house when set for D.C. So in the United States, we can see that our 9th house institutions will be very busy this eclipse season. The 9th house governs matters involving foreign countries and foreigners, that is, foreign to the United States. The 9th house also governs courts and the judiciary, and it also has to do with religion, churches, houses of worship, and religious institutions in general. According to William Lilly, who is referencing Ptolemy, eclipses in this decan bring some king, prince, or eminent officer to prison or restraint of liberty. It adds sorrow and danger of death onto him, destruction of bearing fruit trees, and it portends to the rottenness or putrefaction of such things as the earth produces, whereby both man and beast are afflicted. Now, what's fascinating is that in recent days we've gotten reports of bird flu being transferred to cattle in some cases, and to people, but primarily to cattle. And of course, cattle are ruled by Taurus as well as Aries, right? Because they have hooves. So domesticated animals that have hooves are associated with Aries and Taurus. So we can see a perhaps sudden or unexpected affliction to these kinds of animals. More relevant or more dramatic perhaps, we are looking at somebody famous, a king, a prince, someone of that solar nature who undergoes, again, prison or restraint of liberty. Now, the reason that the symbolism exists is that the second decan of Aries is ruled by the sun, and of course the sun symbolizes kings, princes, and eminent people of all kinds, as we saw in the Robert Flood passage earlier. Because the sign of the eclipse, Aries, is ruled by Mars, the god of war and conflict, it suggests harm coming to solar people as a result of an eclipse in this decan. What's also interesting is that in this particular eclipse, its ruler, Mars, will be in Pisces, the 12th sign from the eclipse, and Mars will be conjoining Saturn, emphasizing the symbolism of imprisonment and restraint of liberty of a solar person, raising the danger of death, all of which are symbolized by Saturn, etc. Saturn, of course, represents things like prison, it represents all kinds of restrictions, and of course it also has to do with death. Now, this symbolism is applicable worldwide, although it will be especially likely to manifest in North America, where the eclipse will be visible, so Mexico, the United States, and Canada as well. In the chart specifically set for Washington, D.C., Mars in Pisces applies to conjoin Saturn in about a degree in the 8th house, Now, I'm sure you know that the 8th house is a malefic house, suggesting loss and sometimes death, reiterating potentially bad things happening to a solar individual by martial and Saturnian means. Certainly, a prominent person in the United States, maybe more than one, could come to harm, as foretold by this eclipse. Now, as for the question of the timing of this event, duration of the eclipse tells the tale, but that varies a bit by location. The eclipse, just as an example, in Dallas, Texas, will last about 2 hours and 40 minutes, whereas in Caribou, Maine, the duration is 2 hours 18 minutes. It averages to about 2.5 hours. So in the United States, we will assume that the eclipse effects will last approximately 2.5 years from the date of the eclipse, with hours of duration of the eclipse corresponding to years. This means that the eclipse effects will not fully complete until late 2026. While the eclipse begins to make an immediate impact, the most intense effects of the eclipse in the US will culminate in the middle of the 2.5-year period, which would start in February 2025 and persist until the end of 2025. So the effects that we discussed will actually become most powerful, visible, and will reach their apex sometime next year. Basically, 2025 in the US is the moment that this eclipse fully flowers and its effects become publicly and fully visible to all. Thanks for watching. I'm Nina Gryphon, and this is the Astrology and Magic channel.